Hey guys, today we are going to focus on a short upper body mobility class. You'll just need 2 blocks, not necessary, but if you just like to have a little extra support, I would grab some. You'll need your mat, and that's about it. Today's class is more so focused on just bringing awareness and movement into the joints, not necessarily trying to bring you through this really hard workout, although it might feel like a workout for some of the exercises. They might be a little bit more challenging, but the intention is just to restore some movement into the joints, especially if you're feeling a bit stiff or stuck from the hips up. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with some neck cars. Base position can be seated here. If you like to sit on a block, you can go ahead and sit on a block, or you can just sit on the ground and cross your legs. So starting with some retraction of the neck, you're going to pull your chin into your throat. That should put your neck in more of a neutral spine. Then we'll bring our chin to the chest. We're going over to the right, scraping your chin along your collarbone until you get chin to armpit. You'll then dip your right ear behind your shoulder, and you're dropping this left shoulder down. You should feel quite a bit of a stretch in the left side of the neck here. From there, we're going to take it into extension of the neck. You're trying to feel out a stretch in the front of the neck, the throat, bringing the back of your skull to touch the tag of your shirt. We continue over to the left. Left ear is dipping behind that left shoulder, dropping the right scapula down. We then come chin to armpit along the collarbone, and then we'll reverse each rep. Going over to the left, finding that nice rotation, peering over that left shoulder. Watch out for any additional joint movement. It could be in the spine or really anywhere. So just trying to block out any help from other neighboring joints. We're trying to isolate only the neck here. Once you've come through center, we'll go over to the right again. We have 3 rotations to the right and 3 to the left. 6 reps altogether. I'm going to take this at a slower pace. I find it when you start to go faster with the neck cars, it can just kind of turn into a mindless head circle situation, and you miss out on some moments of feeling stretch if we kind of go too fast. Scraping chin along the collarbone, dipping the right ear back, finding that stretch in front of the throat, rotating chin to armpit, trace your collarbone over to the left. Encouraging a nice tall spine and your best posture to go through these neck cars. One more to the right and then one more to the left. If you have never done a neck car before, I encourage you to visit my how to do a neck car tutorial video so you feel a little bit more supported in what we're doing here. And then we have one more rotation to the left, scraping chin to the left armpit, peering over the shoulder, finding that stretch on the opposite end, lifting the chin up, rotating, armpit, chin to chest. Perfect. So we just did 3 to the right, 3 to the left. Hopefully I didn't miss any reps. Okay, so moving on, scapula. Still in a seated position. I just want to remind you, you can always change your base position. If it's more comfortable to be in a chair or standing, do it. So we're going to have our arms straight out in front of us. Nice tight fist just so we can create some tension up the forearm into the bicep. We're going to do some scapula cars. We're going to start with retraction of the shoulder blades. So in retraction with the scapulas, you're going to squeeze your shoulder blades in towards your spine. From there, we'll elevate the shoulder blades up towards the earlobes. Then to protract, spread them away. You're trying to create as much space between your shoulder blades as you can. Keep that protraction and then depress the shoulder blades down. Again, squeeze them in, lift, protract, depress. One more time. Squeeze, lift, protract, depress. I'm just going to change my view for the reversed version. So we're going to reverse. We have protraction, creating space between those shoulder blades. Elevation, retraction, crushing that walnut, depression. Again, protraction, elevation, retraction, and down. One more rep. Spread them around the rib cage. Lift, retract, and depress. Just a little side note here. As you're going through a scapular car, we want to do our best to disassociate any spine movements. We don't want it to turn into a cat-cow. Also watching for the neck trying to cheat. So just making sure we're isolating only the scapula and that we don't reach for help from the spine or the neck or anywhere else. So we're going to do that same exercise, but we're going to come to a tabletop position. It'll be a little bit more weight bearing, a little bit spicier for the shoulder blades. Coming to an all fours position. Also, if you have any wrist issues, sometimes I will tell my clients to place their hands on top of blocks like so, fingertips kind of hanging off, and it should relieve some of that pressure on the wrist. But going through those same scapula cars here, blocking out the spine, a little bit of contraction in the core. We're going to retract the shoulder blades. Elevate, lift, create space, protraction, and then depress. Again, squeeze, lift, protract, press. One more time. Squeeze, elevate, protract, depress. Let's reverse. Be mindful of that spine, trying to help. We're in protraction. We're going to lift, squeeze, depress, spread. Elevate shoulder blades up towards the ears. Squeeze the shoulder blades in towards the spine without arching the spine. Keep that retraction. Slide them down the back. Protract. Press them away. One more. Lift. Squeeze. Depress. And protract. Perfect. So those were 2 variations of scapular cars. And now we will be moving on to the spine, my favorite. Okay. I've been keeping it seated for most of this mobility class, but like I said, you can stand up if you want to. I am going to put 2 blocks here and sit my bottom on the blocks. You can also just be in a more kneeling position. This actually will kind of take more pressure off of your knees and any pinching in the front of the hip. So this might be a good option for you if you have tight hips and any knee pain. Spinal segmentation. If you don't know what that is, go look at my tutorial video. But you're going to cross your arms over your chest, and we are going to start with our pelvis. Pelvis is going to initiate by scooping under. I'm trying to find flexion in my low back, flexion in my mid back, flexion in my upper spine. Your core is helping you do so. So it's almost like a mini ab crunch. But on the opposite end, you should feel stretch in your spine. We then start to initiate going into extension. So with the pelvis, you're going to start to stick the tailbone out, and we're attempting to move vertebrae by vertebrae as that extension starts to travel up the mid back. And then in between the shoulder blades, we're thinking lift the sternum versus the chin. Take a breath, exhale. Scoop your tailbone underneath you, using your core to round. And then we go again. Sticking the tailbone out, letting that extension travel up the mid-spine, upper spine. Lifting the sternum nice and high. Again, scooping. Rounding the back. Thinking belly button to spine. And once you found full flexion, we go into extension. We're really trying to max out both flexion and extension. So you're trying to get to the very end of how much movement capacity you have in each of these movements. Moving under. We have 2 more reps here. Rounding that back. And then sticking the butt out, going into that extension. And our last flexion. Keep that flexion. We're going to take it into a spine card. So we want to keep our pelvis pretty solid and still. Pelvis is no longer invited to this party. We're going to keep it from mid-back up. So these are more T-spine controlled articular rotations. First, to rotate over to the right, you're going to dip your right shoulder back, finding as much extension in your upper spine as you can. Twisting over to the left. Rounding forward. And then we reverse our direction. Rotation. Side bend. You should feel that contraction. Contraction starts to carry into the back space. Lifting the chest. Rotating. Squeezing out as much rotation as you can. Rounding forward. We go to the right again. We have 3 to the right, 3 to the left. Once again, you are trying to find your max range of motion in each of the movements of the spine. So before you move from one point to another, challenge yourself to squeeze out as much rotation like you're wringing out a towel before you come into that forward flexion. It's going to give you more information about your joints capabilities if you go to your end range versus staying in mid-range and kind of bypassing things and making them very quick. Nice. We have 1 more to the right, twisting, side bending, lifting the chest, rotate. And then last one to the left. And we're doing our best to keep our hips quiet. We're trying to keep them still. Nice. Whew. Love a good spine car. You can do those standing, you can do those seated. So many ways you can move your spine. Okay, one last thing. We are going to get into some wrist cars. So elbows are going to be by your sides. You can have blades for the hands or fists. First, we're going to come into extension of the wrist. Here, we want to make sure the front of our forearm stays facing the ceiling so that we don't go into elbow rotation. From here, we're going to bring the wrist in towards the midline, carving that circle up, feeling that stretch in the back of the wrist. We then go to the outside of the circle and then back to extension. Again, going in, doing our best to keep the front of your wrist facing the ceiling, carving that space out and away towards the middle, extending, bringing it in. Keep a nice tight fist here if you can. Once you've done 3, we're going to reverse our direction, going out, flexing up, trying to feel that stretch on the back here. We then go in towards the center and then out. These are very hard, very humbling. Yes. Once again, we are trying to isolate as much rotation in our wrist as possible here without cheating with elbow or neck or shoulder or anything that might try to help us get through these wrist carves. I lost track of my direction. But you'll do 3 to one direction, 3 to the other. Good. And then once you've done that, you'll relax your hands. And that is the end of this upper body class. Once again, if you have any questions or confused about anything we did in class today, I have some tutorials on all of the cars. I encourage you to go through those and do your cars every day, guys.